most of you know, for the last several years, I've been walking around North and South America, and I've been meeting with various Rosicrucian groups and various Rosicrucian individual members. And part of that has been a lifelong dream, for at least 40 years, to find people who live by their heart. And that was reputed of the people of South America, and I found that to be true. There's another reason that has been on my mind, and that's the subject of this talk. It's one of those perplexing questions that has bothered me for a very long time. And it is about the Rosicrucian fellowship itself. And that question is something that can be asked in various number of ways, but the answer is always very elusive. You can state it in one sentence, and you could say, why has the membership of the Rosicrucian fellowship been falling dramatically, especially during the time period, that is since 2000, when one would expect it to be growing? It's a tough question. Now, when you ask that kind of question to people who are inquiring minds, another question usually comes up in response. How do you know that this is the time when you would expect growth? That's the subject of another talk which I gave quite a few years ago here. And that is that all of the cycles in 2001, all of the binary cycles in the cosmos were in first phase. And that's something that doesn't happen for many thousands of years. And anything initiated or reinitiated at that time should be applicable for many thousands of years in the future, especially if the new moon was right in the middle of this. So it should be put to the floorboard, and we should be growing extremely rapidly. But that's too long of a topic to go into. There is an answer. It's long, it's technical, and it would require an extra lecture, and I'm lucky enough to do this one. Now, the first question, why is our membership falling, is what I am more inclined to look at now. And that is for various reasons. Some of the reasons I don't want to go into, because they are political. And I have a great abhorrence of politics, especially church politics. So I don't want to go into those kinds of issues. I do not believe that spiritual problems can be solved by politics. Sometimes political and social problems can be solved by politics. But spiritual things cannot be solved by politics or lawsuits or anything of that nature. Another reason why I'm disinclined to look at that first question in the normal way is because we can't do anything about most of the answers to that question. We can examine them, but to examine them without coming to conclusions that lead to action is a very difficult thing to do. So, what I have done is reframe the question at least 2 or 3 more times. And that is in a much more proactive stance. What can we do to renew the work of Christ and the Rosicrucian order in the world? Which doesn't necessarily mean the Rosicrucian fellowship. What can we do to renew the work of Christ and the Rosicrucian order in the world? Now, there's one answer that the whole lecture would be over right away. That is, you could say, you could live the life. That's what Max Heindel would say, and that's worth several lectures in itself. But we're more children of fire, and because we are children of fire, we want more reasonable answers, the kind of answers that Eddie was just talking about. And let's try to do that. So, but before we answer that question, we have to reframe it one more time. If we're talking about renewing, or making something new, something fresh, we have to ask ourselves a basic question in ways that we can apply it. What is new? So the topic of this talk is what is new, or what's new. Now, it may sound foolish to ask such a question, but I like foolish questions. It says something about my nature. It gets fairly here on here. If we look at the cosmography of the Rosicrucian philosophy, and especially if we look at the reality to which it points, we see that the Rosicrucian fellowship philosophy, or the philosophy of the Rosicrucian order, is a dualistic monism. It is all one thing. It is a monism, but that monism is in various states, and those states fall along what could be called the pole of being. In the Rosicrucian cosmos conception, it's called the spirit-matter pole. Of all of the states of reality within the one being, they are either more toward the spiritual end, or they are more toward the material end. If we ponder this, and if we think about this in terms of the title of the talk that we're in now, we come to the conclusion that there must be two different kinds of newness in the cosmos. And that is what there really is. There are two different kinds of newness in the cosmos in which we live. Now, we've been talking a lot about the Rosicrucian cosmoconception. The secondary title for that book is called Christian Mysticism. The Rosicrucian philosophy is about the reality of the cosmos from the viewpoint of Christ, not from any of the Christian churches or any of the existing Christian religions. It is a mystic Christian viewpoint about the reality of the cosmos. We're interested in reality foremost, and the cosmos. Yes. So let's begin first at the spirit end pole, and let's begin by talking about Christ. Now, when we're talking about Christ in the Rosicrucian philosophy, we are not talking about Jesus. We are talking about the cosmic being Christ, not the human being Jesus. We're talking about that sublime spiritual being which during the 3 years ministry inhabited, focused in, physical body of Jesus. And this is probably the wise course to follow, because we're given a hint of the biblical Christ Jesus in the Apocalypse. In the Apocalypse, the being that represents Christ Jesus says, "Behold, I make all things new. Behold, I make all things new." Rosicrucian philosophy, we learn several things about who in what Christ did. For instance, we hold that Christ is the highest initiate of the humanity of the Son, period. That is the highest initiate of our current archangel. As such, Christ is the representation or the personification of the second attribute of the Godhead, which in Christianity is called the Son. In that second attribute, in that attribution, as the second member of the Godhead, the lowest vehicle of Christ is life spirit. In fact, Christ is the central focus of life spirit. In the book of Revelation, chapter 21, verse 5, the being represents Christ says, "Behold, I make all things new." This is one of those few statements in the Bible that can be taken completely literally. There is no allegory, there is no symbolism taken literally. But when we take it literally, we have to be very careful how we do that. When Christ says, "I make," it does not mean to take action. We make a birdhouse or something like that. The transcendent spirit, especially beyond the human spirit, which includes life spirit, divine spirit, and on into the deeper spiritual worlds, does not take direct action the way we as earthlings do. It's not the nature of life spirit to take direct action. Like life spirit can't wash dishes for dinner. In those lofty realms of pure spirit, everything is done in spirit. Everything is sustained in spirit. It lives in the spirit. And from that, things issue, or within that, things issue that become manifest and eventually concrete. Thus we can say, when we're talking about the life spirit, and the life spirit makes all things new, that renewal is a renewal in spirit. That is to say, the life spirit through Christ is being itself. And being itself, it is always new. That is every single moment. The moment's not differentiated there, it's all one moment. Everything is brand new. To experience Christ is to experience newness. And that newness is always fresh. It's always new. Now, that experience, even though we're talking about it in an extremely lofty and removed transcendental way, is something all of us have experienced. It's the beauty of the Rosicrucian philosophy. It is about things that we have all experienced. Maybe not physically, but in our consciousness we have experienced it. Some of you may have gone beyond the experience of the Holy Spirit. Some of you may have experienced the second birth in Christ. Christ Jesus says in various places in the Gospels, especially in John 3, that we must be born again to enter the new kingdom. Now remember, new has two meanings here. It is new, but it is also the spirit of newness. When we talk about the Old Testament and the New Testament is not just new to be differentiated from the Old Testament. the religion of Christ is the religion of newness. That you cannot be a Christian and be dogmatic. Because if you are truly a Christian, you are born anew habitually. So it is a new religion that is always new. Now sometimes we read something like the Bible, or we read the Koepsel conception, and we discover something new. It's something that we may have seen on previous readings and have gone over it many times before, but now it's a new discovery to us. It's an example of the newness. You know, like, wow, why didn't I see that before? It was always right before my eyes. Those are statements of something that is eternally present, that we should have experienced, and we didn't awaken to it. We weren't born into that experience. The next time we pass over the same passage, it may be completely new again. And we may see it in a totally different way. The Spirit has many different sides to it. We can see it, and that's exactly what the newness is like. This is what our lives should be like if we're Christians. You should discover each person new every time you see them. And it's a wondrous, loving kind of experience to see somebody that's completely, like when you meet somebody, you say, wow, that's really a great person. But often you take them for granted. And in reality, what should happen is that we should see each person new each time we see them. And that is what our life should feel like. So when we're reading the Koepsel conception, or if we're reading the Bible, the newness is not in the book. The newness is in us. The discovery in the intuitive moment is the experience of newness in the life spirit, which means we have come to life. We have come to what is a spiritual life and not a material life. Every intuition of the life spirituality is truly the experience of Christ. If we have an intuitive movement and we can delve or project ourselves into that intuitive movement, it becomes eternal. That we are not deprived in any way when we have an intuition from having a full out enlightening experience. They're one and the same thing, except in our capacity to sustain that moment. The best experience of newness, probably for all of us, are in moments of grace. When we are forgiven, especially if we are forgiven by someone else being a vehicle for the life spirit, everything is new. And not only is it new, everything is better. If there has been a relationship that has been fine all along, and then there's a hard moment, and there's a forgiveness, that relationship is not only restored, it's better than it ever was in the first place, because it has that new element. It has that altruistic love of grace. It's new. Now, we know when we have moments of grace, when we're forgiven, that cause and consequence are not voided. They continue on just as they have always continued on. But what happens is we just see things in a different light. And in that new life, and in that new love, even though the cause and consequences are there, we can work with them creatively. The new life, the newness of Christ, means that if we are living in Christ, our lives should be creative. Even in silly little habits that we do every day, they should be done creatively. They should be done new. It's not a forced thing, But if you say to myself, Lord, can I look at this in a different way? Grace is there, and it's willing to be there for us more than we are willing to reach out for it. It's a wonderful thing. Heindel tells us that in the world of life spirit, there is a memory of nature. Now, that memory of nature is not like the one in the ethers. And it's not like hieroglyphs that are chiseled into stone. It's not like dusty old manuscripts or anything like that. Because it is in the life spirit, it is alive. It is perpetually alive. It is new and is perpetually renewed. This means that everything that has ever happened in history, maybe not in all the material details, but in the essence of it, it is continuously relived, it's continuously renewed, and that when you experience that, it is alive as if everything were present, past and future were present right now. That's the way that memory, we notice it as timeless. Somebody stepped out the door yesterday and missed the whole this morning. When Gary was giving his talk, were outside and they had a timeless moment sharing with each other and they missed the whole talk. That's what it's like. So, when Christ says, "Behold, I make all things new," that is what that being is talking about. It is that newness. Now the question is, how does this relate to Rosicrucian fellowship? How can we apply this to our work in the world? Now the Rosicrucian fellowship is approximately 100 years of age. It's coming to be that very soon. And the writings of Maximilian are unchanged. Some would say that few people even read books. Most people read a magazine, and that's about it. And even fewer people read books that are 100 years old. So some would say what we need to do is modernize the language in the Rosicrucian cosmoconception and modernize the references. That might be a good thing to do. That doesn't solve the problem. Others would say, well, we should change the content. And still others would say, no, the content should remain the same because it's about eternal, timeless things. All of these viewpoints, as far as what we are doing or what we're trying to do, is all of these viewpoints miss the point altogether. There is only one significant difference between the Rosicrucian fellowship then and the Rosicrucian fellowship now. Only one difference is the teaching is identical. And that only difference is assignment. Now this is a lecture that is not as a pitch for a new leader. Because if we go around looking for a leader, that is also missing the point. Instead, we have to ask ourselves, what was there about Max Heindel that when he lived and carried on after his life, that attracted all of the many hundreds and thousands of people all over the world to the wonderful Rosicrucian teaching? What was there about him that was different from us? Obvious answer is that he was a Christian initiate. As a Christian initiate, he had the experience of Christ in the life spirit. He felt that love, he felt that light, and if I'm told, if what I've been told is correct, that in healing services at Mount Ecclesia, they experienced it regularly. Everybody would walk out of the chapel after a healing service, tears streaming down their eyes because they had drawn directly on the life spirit. They were doing it through the healing work. Now, this is something that was not a single experience. It was something that was repeated again and again. Now, in the Rosicrucian cosmic conception, we're taught how the law of attraction works in the desire world. That is, when we sacrifice self and give to others, that very act of giving out in the desire world attracts people to us. Nobody wants to be around somebody who's always selfishly taking to himself. That repulses. But if you're sacrificing for the sake of others and you really love and care about them, that attracts people. Now, if that love that we're giving to other people happens to be the love of the life spirit, that attractive power is inestimable. That is, many, many people can be attracted to that. It doesn't depend on the cosmic conception. It doesn't depend on the nature of the service. It depends on the spiritual reality. If we are bringing through the love of the life spirit, the very fact that we sacrifice and give to others attracts. And that's the very thing that we want to be doing with the Rosicrucian philosophy. We want to be giving life spirit that kind of love to others. Now, in the Rosicrucian fellowship, we are given a very clear formula for how to reach into the life spirit. Here in Madison, we do it every week. We do the healing service. And in that healing service is the formula for how to reach into the life spirit, to draw on it for healing work. Therefore, if we band together in little groups and pray long and hard and deep with all of our heart, we can do that. We may not always have beautiful sessions, but it is something that each and every one of us can do. I'm sure each and every one of us had an experience in life where there was somebody that we wanted to hate. We prayed with all of our might not to do that because we didn't want to do it. And sometimes, usually, if we really are in earnest in those prayers, not only do we not hate the person, but they really become our friend instead. And John can tell you from Rosenet, he talked about it earlier this morning, that praying and drawing on the life spirit produces miraculous results. In our little prayer group, we've had people come to us and say thank you because they had miraculous results as a result of asking for our healing prayers. So it is a very important, simple thing that each and every one can do. You don't have to be a good speaker. You don't have to study a lot. And you don't have to be outwardly looking in some great form. When the lights are out and you're praying with all of your might, everybody is equal. Anybody should be able to do that. And if you think about that, if we do that, it radiates the entire Rosicrucian fellowship. You don't have to be at headquarters. It can be done anywhere in the world. Anyone makes that breakthrough. Everybody following along similar lines is attuned to that. And it's there for everyone then. It works for our whole good. Now, Max Heindel talks in a number of places in the writings that at times during involution, when we are going deeper and deeper and deeper into matter, it takes so much to go through those limitations that we have to sacrifice some spiritual abilities that we had at one time in order to learn something new in this deeper concentration in matter. And when we gain that something new in a deeper state of matter, then when we ascend back into the spiritual worlds, we gain back what we lost, but we gain it back as a higher capacity. The example that is given is that at one time we were plant-like. And it wasn't a physical sun like we see with our eyes now, but we drew light from the spiritual sun and we specialized it. We were like little condensers. We could hold it, just like our plants do now. Every animal and every human being must have plant life in order to live. They've tried experiments with having people living off of things that weren't alive, and the results were terrible. The Germans tried it with a submarine crew, where they gave them no fresh food at all. And within half a year's time, they all had nutrition. They had to have raw, fresh things. But we sacrificed that ability in order to gain the capacity to desire. When we became animal-like, we gained the capacity to desire to motivate ourselves. And when we motivate ourselves, we can be propelled to do things. Now, in that formula of the healing prayer, what we do is we use our desire body with all of our motivation. We drive our prayers to reach into life spirit. That is the best possible use that we can do with the desire body. And when we do that, we draw through the life spirit. Now, when we bring it to this world, we transduce it. We bring it down into an etheric state where it becomes an etheric healing panacea. And that means that we are beginning to become creators of new plant life. Because the very thing that is involved in our healing work, where we take life spirit and bring it down so that it's usable as a healing panacea, is the very thing that we will do when we are root spirits leading the now minerals to a plant-like state. They will stay alive and they will have the vital body as long as we can sustain our concentration and hold that vital body together for them until they can take on the work of themselves. So this is one of those beautiful things, even though we said that when we sacrifice and give love to others, that this attracts people to us. This is one of those sacrifices that you give back much, much more than you ever tried to give up. You sacrifice in order to care. It's hard work. It's very hard work, but you sacrifice to take care of others in healing, and in the process, you begin to become a divine, creative being. You gain back quality that begins to lift us toward an angel-like state. Now that's quite a wonderful thing. Not only are we becoming divine creative beings, we are preparing the world for the next state. Because every time we bring down life spirit and condense it into the ethers, we are bringing in the new globe, the new etheric globe that we're all going to be evolving on. So that new Jerusalem that descends from heaven in the book of Revelation is what we're doing each meal. Healing prayer by healing prayer by healing prayer. Even though it seems sometimes like we're not getting anywhere, we're actually taking very incrementally, bringing about little bitty changes. We're bringing that into existence. All right? That is one kind of newness that there is in the cosmos that we're trying to get at through the Rosicrucian philosophy. Now, when we go to the other end of the spiritual matter pole to look at the other kind of newness, it's something much more difficult to get at. In order to get at it, we have to try to do the impossible. In this case, to do the impossible, means to speak about the unspeakable. In the Rosicrucian philosophy, we have a name for the unspeakable. The unspeakable is called the Absolute. The Absolute is everything that is, and it is everything that isn't. And it is everything that is, and everything that isn't, and you can't say it's unspeakable. We don't have a consciousness that we can talk about the Absolute. Silence is probably the only way, or the best way, to speak about this because it's supra-rational. For this reason, in almost all cultures, the Absolute has been symbolized either by silence or by complete darkness. No presence of anything because there's light in it, and there isn't light in it, and it has that kind of quality. Now, in the Rosicrucian philosophy, everything that is called the Supreme Being. It's not God that we're talking about. We're talking about on a much, much higher level. We're talking about on a level that is from the very beginning of all things. The Supreme Being is everything that is. There is no name for what is not. The non-being of the Absolute, we have no name for it. However, there is a name for what is in between being and not being. Over half your time. Too long. And that state between being and non-being is called potential. And potential is what could be. And that state, looking at it as we are looking at it from the spirit-matter pole, that state of potential has two poles of its own, which indicate the quality of what could be or what is coming to be within the Absolute. And those two qualities of potential are called time and space. Now, we're not talking about time and space in the way that it is used by physics. We're talking about it on a much deeper level, and we're talking about it in a completely generalized way. The name of time is associated with the spirit pole. Time is filled with spirit. Space is filled with matter. No matter what kind of matter or what kind of spirit, they are what comes into being through the potential of time-space between being and non-being. Now, that potential state overall, whether it is potential spirit or potential matter, what that is, whether it is time or space, has a name in the Rosicrucian philosophy. It is called cosmic root substance. In our local solar evolution, time is filled with spirit. And so we talk about the periods of time and have spiritual qualities that are like the qualities of planets. The Saturn period and the Sun period and such like that. Also, in our local solar creation or evolutionary creation, there are states of matter, which we call globes. We call them globe A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Gee whiz. It's the gee whiz.
7 of.
Yes. They could be called by planetary names, but what would happen is then they would be confused with the planets themselves, which are also globes. So they don't do that in Rosicrucian philosophy. It's bad, but we think it would be too wordy to do that. Now, all of these spiritual periods of time and material globes in space are in various worlds. These worlds are various grades or states of being that we've talked about along the spirit-matter pole. Sometimes they're general and universal, sometimes they're localized. Physical body of God of our solar system is the planets. Like it isn't one contiguous body like our physical bodies, but it is spread out, like our organs are spread out. Thus, in the Rosicrucian philosophy, we have globe A, globe B, and such like that. The Rosicrucian cosmic conception describes and explains all of this quite clearly in part 2 of the cosmic conception, but it is a tough read, and you probably want to read it at least 10 or 12 times more. But we've gotten a little bit ahead of ourselves. When the Supreme Being, which is that which is, and that which is known, is filled with the urge to give, which seems to be the urge of everything divine, is to give and to create, it projects into cosmic root substance. It projects a divine dream, a divine plan about things that could be but haven't yet been, and things that could be but are not known. It is constantly giving. There's manifestation after manifestation after manifestation. It works like this on the solar level also. This is why Max Heindel calls the principle of analogy, as above, so below. What has gone before in heaven will follow after on earth. Know this and rejoice. It's called the Hermetic axiom. When the Supreme Being, or the God of the solar system, projects itself into the unknown, it is both a creation and an experiment. Because it has to be looked on too. It isn't all known. So anytime there is a projection of will into cosmic root substance, that produces a resistance. But the resistance of cosmic root substance is that everything always wants to fall back to nothingness. And so that the sustaining will of the divine is what congeals matter. The various grades of matter that we've been talking about. Now, when we're talking about this, we're talking about this on the most fundamental level of Supreme Being. It works in our life, too. Anytime we want to do some creative work, the most common word for the resistance and congealment of matter as an obstruction to creative thing, the most common example of that is what is called writer's block. When you need and want to do something, and like I remember when I went to college, all the best movies were showing when it was time to study for final exams. It looked better then, it had to be that way. When the Supreme Being, or the God of the solar system, projects itself into the unknown, it is a creation and an experiment. It has that equal and opposite reaction. Thus, the known, by projecting itself has a dream into the unknown, and struggling with the unknown produces creation. And in that creation, what could be, it is made something real. Whether we're doing an artistic project ourselves or whether it is the creation of the entire cosmos, it is the realization of a dream that brings things into being, that takes the unknown that was only potential before and brings it into being known. Matter, like the matter where we exist, is the interface between the known and the unknown. And in the struggle with matter, out of that experience, the essence is drawn, and that essence, when it is absorbed into the being that does the knowing, which is the spirit, is when the unknown becomes known. There are all kinds of technical terms talking about it, talking about soul matter and things like that, but I want to keep this short. We don't want this to become too long. Now, we have to remember that the potential is unknown, but it is at the same time unobjectively self-conscious. It is spirit, but it is potentially objective, waking, self-conscious spirit. It's all one. It just is what changes. It's just an attitude that changes in all of it. In fact, the Rosicrucian philosophy says that the whole process is threefold. It says that there is the materialization of spirit, the spiritualization of matter, and the awakening of creative consciousness. Now, all of this explains why materialism, as Eddie just talked about a few minutes ago, is so dangerous. First, it is the deepest aspect of the spirit that the real aspect, the divine spirit, that lies sleeping in the dense matter. It's a reflective projection that is asleep in dense matter. If a person becomes inverted and becomes a materialist, they see everything backwards and upside down. Materialists are really seeking the deepest of the divine in the deepest degree of materialization rather than in spirit. They're constantly going further away from the divine to seek the divine that is in spirit but lying asleep in matter. They're both right. This is why people want matter, especially why they go after what Paul calls the law of the flesh. There is another law in my members, because we look at bodies. We appreciate them for the divine creation, but there is something on a very deep level instinctually that the will to be is in that body. And if we got selfishness in us, we want that. And if we're selfish, we're insecure. And the more insecure we are, the more we want of it. This is why people want more and more money, and they want more and more things. The other danger of materialism is that it's something like a cosmic fad. Faddists always want to be with the newest and the latest thing. They want to be with that potential that is passing from the unknown into the known. We all want to be on the bandwagon. We all want to ride on the trail of glory as the unknown becomes the newest of new things from the material point of view. Hopefully, we're not so insecure. We need to do either of these. But it certainly gives us a greater understanding of what what is going on, in a way, materialism is correct. The falseness of materialism is that they believe that everything comes out of matter, and that even our consciousness is a product of interaction of matter, which completely devoids the spirit, because the spirit doesn't need matter. The truth is the truth. But in a way, there is something that is right in that. Because everything that is new, that is coming into being, that we're taking out of potential and bringing it into existence, does come out of matter. And all the spiritual philosophies that are not willing to delve into matter, they don't get the fruits of novelty. They don't get, they don't get a chance to actually participate in the creation of something new out of potential. Now, how does this apply to the work of the Rosicrucian Fellowship and our ability to attract new members to this wonderful, wonderful philosophy? We talk about a body of literature. And the legacy of Max Heindel in his written works would be called a body of wisdom. And that word body is an excellent word because the body relates to matter. However, the Rosicrucian cosmoconception, the other writings of Max Heindel, are not like a body. They're more like a skeleton. Max Heindel could only say so much. And he said that this is only the elementary part. That skeleton needs to be fleshed out. That is what our work is, and that is what Max Heindel tells us repeatedly. Even if we make mistakes, it's our duty speculatively to flesh that skeleton out. Because if we don't tentatively try to understand something and work with it and do our own little experiments, that part of the philosophy or that part of reality that the philosophy points to is never going to get anywhere. Max Heindel often tells us that there's much, much more, especially in the lessons that he wrote to students. He says there's much, much more to this, but I can only say this much. He says it would do the student well to ponder on this. And that's what we need to do. There are volumes and volumes that could be written out of the Rosicrucian philosophy. However, our work is not to make volumes and volumes of philosophy, but to do that work to fill out the philosophy so that it is a more satisfying presentation and objective waking self-consciousness of what is going on in the world. That is our duty. We are the realizers. In the dense physical plane, we are the only beings that are self-conscious beings here. In our perceptions, we're the only ones that have these analytical, questioning kinds of mind, and that is our work to do that. And we don't need to be initiates or seers to do that. If we do a lot of deep, clear thinking, like concentration, and if we open ourselves to intuition, more and more, we will actually be able to do this. In the first edition of the Cosmic Conception, the watchwords were, he quotes from Paul, and he says, try all things. In my estimation, we've not been very successful in this kind of renewal, in this resurrection of the body of the works of Max Heindel. We have almost made a fetish of the cosmic conception. We've kept it pure, but we keep saying the same things over and over again and not really discovering. We're not really trying things. Relative to that skeleton that is the cosmic conception, you might even say that we're like buzzards picking on bones. We don't need a new cosmic conception any more than we need a new Max Heindel. What we need to do is to show our gratitude to the Rosicrucian order by fleshing out and carrying out what has already been given to us. If we have private study groups, or even in our daily lives, if we ask, how does this work? Or what does this really mean? Then we are doing that very work, especially when we listen for answers and get intuitive answers. Sometimes one sentence in the Cosmic Conception is worth several books. If we're really successful, we not only flesh out the body of the Rosicrucian philosophy, but we also resurrect it. We bring it to new life. We bring the newness that is out of us. If it is, as Max Steindl taught, that Lazarus was the same being that was Cain, who later became Christian Rosekreutz, this would be, for us, the new rising of Lazarus. So if we ask ourselves, what's new in the Rosicrucian work? I believe from the Rosicrucian philosophy itself, these are two ways to look at newness and to do something to really share what we have